Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Black History Series presentation titled The Number 2 Construction Battalion, A Family's Journey. Our guest speaker is Barbara Porter. Barb was born and raised in Windsor and worked as a registered nurse for over 30 years and recently retired. She has been on the board of the Amherstburg Freedom Museum since 2016 and has acted as the board vice president since 2019. Barb also worked as the Human Rights and Equity Representative for the Ontario Nurses Association and was instrumental in getting a diversity committee in her workplace. As a member of the Rotary Club, Barb also traveled to Chile and Ghana raising money to repair schools, build libraries, and bring water to villages. Additionally, thanks to Barb, a photograph of the No. 2 Construction Battalion is on display in several Legion branches throughout Windsor, Essex. While Barb is presenting today, if you could please mute your microphone and turn off your camera. Also, following her presentation, there will be a question and answer period. So just type in your questions in the comment section or raise your hand and I'll call on you. During the Q&A, you're also welcome to turn your camera back on. So thank you so much to Barb for presenting, and I will pass it over to her.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Lorraine said, my name is Barb Porter. I'm from Windsor. I am the Vice President and the Fundraising Chair for the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about my mother's side of the family and their participation in the No. 2 Construction Battalion. So the history and motivation, a foundation of military service created by Black Canadians and families in Windsor, Essex during the campaigns such as the War of 1812 and the Upper Canada Rebellion. Jeremiah Harris, whose photo is there on the right, served in Captain Nelson's 3rd Essex Colour Militia during the Upper Canada Rebellion, which was supposedly present at Elliott's Point during the capture of the rebel schooner Anne. Respectable symbols of the Black Canadian loyalty, which challenged the perception that Black communities lacked a high sense of duty to their country. This was accomplished through visible displays of loyalty and service, such as enlisting into the military, wearing a uniform, participating in military parades, visible through press articles describing participation in acts of heroism and sacrifice, like death in combat, and the recognition was printed on their headstones. Demonstrated to mainstream society that Black Canadians were part of the community. This instilled a sense of self-respect that elevated the soldiers and their families beyond negative stereotypes and racism that said, you're not good enough. And this tradition has continued on to this present day. The No. 2 Construction Battalion was formed on July 5th, 1916 in Picton, Nova Scotia, and then moved to Truro, Nova Scotia in September of 1916. Men from all over Canada and the US enlisted. A detachment was operated in Windsor, Ontario from September of 1916 to March of 1917. This was the first and only all-Black battalion in Canadian military history. By December of 1916, there was 575 Black men enlisted, over 100 colored men, over 100 men of color enlisted in the Windsor, Essex area. On March 28, 1917, they sailed from Halifax to England on ships that transported only the Black soldiers, and they were escorted by the Navy. The battalion consisted of 4 companies. And this photo here was taken in Windsor, Ontario. So the No. 2 Construction Battalion duties and responsibilities, and I'll just read off some of them. They did serve in the United Kingdom and France, and more than likely some of their duties was cooking, cleaning, building roads, bridges, cutting down trees, fashioning wood into materials that were used for specific things like railroad ties, gun platforms, ammunition boxes. And they maintained the electrical and water systems. They also probably attended to the white soldiers' needs. Now, in this day and age, these men would have been called engineers. And this is a photo of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. Okay, in August of 1914, there was a call for men to enlist in the World War. At least 200 Black men who applied were rejected and told that it was a white man's war. Black men were incapable of serving and winning the war, resulting in their rejection. White soldiers refused to serve with Black soldiers because of their racism and fear. A writing campaign was started in the Black community, members, churches, and organization. An example of a letter written by Arthur Alexander from Buxton, Ontario, wrote a letter to the Minister of Militia and Defense asking why Black Canadians could not serve in the CEF. Alexander's letter was brushed off, and they said that the process was out of their hands. Countless men were injured and dying and needed laborers. The need for laborers resulted in the call for Black Canadians to serve, in addition to the efforts from the community for Black men to serve. So reception, this is a photo that was in the newspaper on May 28, 1918. And African Canadians experienced racism and violence before, during, and after their service. The number two construction battalion members and other Black soldiers endured violence from white soldiers and the civilians. So this is racism in the press. And this photo was called the Three Dusketeers. And this was a reply written by W.H. Kelly, who wrote this in response to the photo. And it was in the newspaper, the Evening Record, May 31st, 1918. This photo may appear to many of your people as a joke to be laughed over, but to us, at the crisis in the affairs of our great empire, when the best blood in your race and in my race is being taken to uphold a great principle, the joke is ill-aimed, and we consider it also cowardly and insulting one. Cowardly because of our numerical and commercial inferiority at the present time, insulting because our men here were not allowed to enlist in any branch of the service as your men were, but permitted only to enlist in the construction battalion to handle a pick and shovel, and now compelled by conscription to serve in the same, with no officers of their own color holding any rank higher than non-commissioned officer outside of their chaplain. Protecting the world's democracy for those who, in spirit of just mockery and prejudice, call them the Dusketeers. So this was an article that we found. Recruitment efforts. J.R.B. Whitney used his newspaper, The Canadian Observer, to help recruit members to the battalion. In every issue, there was a call for recruits, and also a blank form for anybody that wished to volunteer. Whitney had the militia department authorize the formation of what is now known as the Colored Men's Own Battalion. This is a construction battalion of the utmost importance. Bridges, railroads, and artillery roads, which are being destroyed by the enemy in retreat, must be rebuilt immediately in order to keep the fighting men supplied with food, ammunition for war. Okay, so recruitment efforts. There was a recruiting fundraising concert at an auditorium on Olet and London Street here in Windsor, which included speeches and musical entertainment. There was a dance held that raised $200 to help with the fundraising. Central Grove Church held a meeting to induce the boys in the district to enlist, and they also attended the Essex Center Fair looking for recruits, which resulted in encouraging promises, and they did secure 2 men from the Chatham area. So that is what these articles here are showing you, newspaper clippings. So the send-off from the Windsor area here, nearly 1,000 citizens gathered in Windsor to bid farewell to 54 members of the No. 2 Construction Battalion. They were headed for Truro, and then their next move would be overseas. The men marched down Olet Avenue from the Windsor Jockey Club to the train station. Well-wishers cheered from the crowd. Inspection roll call took place, and as the train pulled away, Ola Ensign was sung. And this is an article from the Evening Record, February 16th, 1917. Okay, from here, I'm going to start to talk about this is my grandfather, Alfred Augustus Tudor. He was born in Washington County, Kentucky, son of Merle Tudor and Miranda Bowen. He married Eliza Lockman, the daughter of Woodson Lockman and Ida Derry, and he was a cooper. Okay, and so this is his enlistment papers, and if I don't know if you can see it, he does have, they ask about previous experience in the Army. He did 3 years in the 10th Cavalry, which would also make him a Buffalo Soldier for anybody that knows about the 10th Cavalry. He lists his sister as the next of kin, and her name is Alice M., and that was also my mother's name. So he named my mother after his sister. And now my grandmother's brothers, Jerome and James Lockman, the Reverend James Theodore Wagner of Windsor established Catholic mission for colored children in 1887. The school, orphanage, and Sunday school currently the location of Windsor Regional Hospital on the 11th campus, formerly Hotel Dieu. Jerome and James and other siblings in that family went to this school. And this is a picture of James and Jerome. We don't know which one is which, but it is the two of them. And this is a picture of my Uncle Jerome. He's holding my mother in the middle photo there. So these are the enlistment papers for my Uncle Jerome Lockman. He also did help with the recruitment efforts, as shown in this article here. A recruiting squad for the No. 2 Construction Battalion, colored, composed of Lieutenant L, it looks like an E, Young, and Privates R.S. Thomas and Jerome Lockman is touring the Chatham, Dresden, and Buxton district. Success has attended their efforts at the out of town this week, and they'll be gone for about a week to help with the enlistment or the recruitment efforts. Okay, so this document speaks about an injury that my uncle had, my Uncle Jerome. He did fall off some lumber, fell about 10 to 15 feet off a lumber pile, and he hurt his back and legs, whatever. Over the next little while, he just kept working and didn't bother to go into the doctor or going to get medical help. When he did decide to go in to get medical help, as you notice there, he was told that he was being hysterical. And the diagnosis here is spastic paraplegia, disease at the nervous system causing weakness, stiffness, and muscle spasm to the leg. Now, as a nurse, he did go in there several times, but as a nurse, I noticed on the treatment part of it, they really did nothing for him. They didn't even offer him an aspirin for his pain or his discomfort. He was having tingling in his feet and his hands. His walk was off, like his gait. He just, his reflexes were there, but they were slow. But they said that he was hysterical. And this happened a lot with the Black soldiers during that period of time. I'm going to go to the next photo. And again, he tells his story about falling off of the lumber in France. And as you can see in the bottom part there, they're still saying that he is hysterical and he's doubtful that his injury had anything to do, like it was just a slight injury. That's what they're saying to him, but he's still having problems with his walking and everything. So I found that interesting as a nurse. Like I said, they didn't even treat him. They didn't offer him an ice pack, an aspirin, nothing. Okay, Jerome Lockman's obituary, which was found in the newspaper, but I know this is wrong, and I've been told by my older siblings. He did serve in the Royal Canadian Engineers, later in France with the Forestry Corps. He was a Mason, number 11 F and AM. He died in our house. We lived on Tuscarora Street. It says there that he died elsewhere. He did die in our house. Oh, I know. They said they died at the hospital. Usually when people die at a home, back then they would take them to the hospital and pronounce them dead. Now they have coroners that will go to your house and pronounce you dead. So yeah, he died in our house. He left one brother, Noble, and one sister, Louise, those are two that I knew. I did not know my Uncle Jerome personally. Another thing that is wrong in this obituary is that my mother's name was Mrs. Joseph Porter. They have Mrs. James Porter in here, so that was wrong. But it does show or demonstrate a visual example of respect and honor in the newspaper, as I discussed earlier. So this is James Lockman. I never knew him at all. He died in 1948. This is his attestation papers, and this is his obituary. He worked for the Department of Public Works and was part of the number 2 Construction Battalion. And this is the one and only picture we do have of James, the man in the front of the photo there. Okay. Did you know that the Canadian mill at La Joie, France, at one point produced a record 160,000 board feet of lumber in less than a day? The number 2 also received unit accommodations for its service in providing the lumber. Approximately 700 Black soldiers were also in non-segregated units outside of the number 2 Construction Battalion and fought in such battles as the Somme, Ypres, Vimy Ridge, Hill 70, and Palichet. So this is an article that we found about a bronze plaque honoring 1,100 men of the number 2 Construction Battalion, or colored volunteers. And this is at, this plaque was unveiled at Parliament Hall in Toronto in the Border City Star. September 21st, 1926 is when this article appeared. I'm not sure if this plaque is still there or if anybody has seen it. But at that time, they could have done more for all the sacrifices that was done, that these Black soldiers endured. But this was a start back then. So just want to say, as a child, I knew that members of my family served in the wars. But, you know, you watch television and you only see the white soldiers. You never saw any Black soldiers. So when I was able to go on Ancestry and open up and seeing the facts and the proof of my family being being part of these wars. And then Anthony Sherwood approached me and told me about the upcoming apology on July 9th that was held in Truro, Nova Scotia. I started to jump into gear and make sure that people in this area knew about the number 2 Construction Battalion and their important role, and the important role of the men from Windsor, Essex area. So I had with the museum board in agreement, we decided to give a photo of the local number 2 members, the photo I showed you earlier that was taken in Windsor, to any and all legions that wanted one. And here's some of the presentations on the photo and of the photo and the media coverage. So that's what these photos are. Then I did on March, I did have the opportunity to go to Truro to go and hear Prime Minister Trudeau apologize to the members and their families of the number 2 construction, well, the families of the members of the number 2 construction battalion on July 9th this year in Truro, Nova Scotia. So here's some photos of that event. And I would like to thank you so much for listening to my presentation. These men deserve recognition, and I will continue to push that the recognition makes it to every display in the legions, or every legion that we can display them in. And I want to thank Lorraine Brigden, MK Wallen, for helping me out with this presentation.
Thank you so much, Barb. We're more than happy to help you with this presentation, and you did a fantastic job. So anyone in the audience, if you do have questions, you can go ahead and either raise your hand or put it in the comment section, but I had a few questions myself. Barb, I was just wondering, you'd mentioned about your trip to Truro for the apology. I was just wondering if you could talk to that experience and what it meant to you.
It was really exciting to be part of that history, actually, in the making. We met so many families who had relatives that served in this battalion, and they had so many displays up on the streets and that, just commemorating the number 2 construction battalion. It really made me proud. The crowd of people that were there, and Justin Trudeau, who I felt did give a sincere apology to the families. It was really awesome. We did receive a little badge, a replica of the badge from the number 2 construction battalion if you were a direct family member. And it was really awesome. I was proud. I was proud to know that I had family members in the Black Battalion.
Barb, I was also wondering, so November 11th, Remembrance Day is coming up, and you're going to be presenting a wreath again. I was just wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, just let our audience know in case anyone wants to join.
Okay, November 11th last year, once I heard about the number 2 construction battalion, and I started getting the information out there and passing it on to the photo to legions, I approached the legion about being able to lay a wreath at the cenotaph in downtown Windsor in remembrance of the number 2 construction battalion, which they agreed to let me do. So this year again, I will be laying a wreath out in remembrance of the number 2 construction battalion. And if anybody's available, it would really be nice that we have a good audience there to help support and keep this information going. It's important for the youngsters to know that they have something to be proud about in their past as far as military and that. And it's just interesting to see. It's very knowing that these men fought for us and cared enough to do that. I'd appreciate anybody that could make it.
Great, thank you so much, Barb. I just had one, it's not a question, but more of a comment. So thanks to Barb and sharing this information. The family history that I've written for this month, as some of you may know, each month I research and write about a local Black family and post that family history on our website. And this month it is the Lockman family. So if anyone did want to learn more about Barb's family members, she has kindly provided information and photographs to help me write that family history. So it is available on our website. So far, only 2 parts of it have been shared, but the final 3 parts will be shared each Tuesday, as usual. So again, it's on our website, amherstburgfreedom.org. So thank you to Barb for sharing that information and the photographs to make that happen. So I don't see any questions from our audience, but I just wanted to end by saying thank you so much to Barb for not only sharing information about the #2 Construction Battalion, but I think what makes this presentation extremely interesting is the family connection that you have to the battalion, because oftentimes we'll see a photograph and we don't always know the names of the men that are in those photographs. So the fact that you're able to that you were able to share your personal connection to the battalion and put a face to members of the battalion, I think is amazing. So thank you so much, Barb, and thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Lorraine.